Movie's a 10, but there's a big plot hole where the movie actually doesn't need its main character at all.
I'm in a 3-minute video in response to this, only to realize that I can't use your sound in the stitch. Anyway, I love you, man. I think you're awesome. But I do want to clarify something. And unfortunately, Big Bang Theory has done a lot to muddle our understanding of this film. It's not a plot hole because Indiana Jones is not trying to end the bad guys. That's never been his objective. His objective from the beginning is to retrieve the Ark. It's important to understand that he's a character who's a pragmatist. He starts out as a guy who does not believe. He has scenes in the classroom or scenes with Marcus Brody where he talks about not believing in this kind of nonsense, hocus pocus, boogeyman, that kind of stuff. But at the end, through his experiences with Marion specifically, he believes, he learns to believe. He finds his faith, if you will. I go into detail in the other video, and I guess I'm going to have to post it. I did save it in my drafts. Sorry that there's a part 2. And I know that Straw Hat Goofy is mostly joking with this, so no hate at all whatsoever. I hope you do watch the second part of this video. I'll pin it and post it in the comments. Alright, this is part 2 of my video about Raiders of the Lost Ark, where I talk about why Big Bang Theory is fundamentally misunderstanding the film.
Indiana Jones plays no role in the outcome of the story.
We need to think in terms of what the main character's objective is. Indiana Jones is trying to find and retrieve the Ark, not end the bad guys.
They want you to get a hold of the Ark before the Nazis do.
For Indy, this is a race. It's an opportunity to make up for the loss that he suffered at the hands of Belloc.
I had it in my hand.
All he wants to do is retrieve the Ark so he can bring it to the museum.
And the museum? The museum gets the Ark when we're finished.
Oh, yes.
But why does this matter for Indy as a character? Let's think about where Indy starts, specifically in comparison to every other character.
Hitler's a nut on the subject. He's obsessed with the occult.
It's like nothing you've ever gone after before.
Death has always surrounded it. It is not of this earth.
Indy doesn't believe in that.
This site also demonstrates one of the great dangers of archaeology, not to life and limb, although that does sometimes take place. No, I'm talking about folklore.
The original stone tablets that Moses brought down out of Mount Hera have been smashed, if you believe in that sort of thing.
Now, what's that supposed to be coming out of there?
Lightning. Fire. Power of God or something.
What are you trying to do? Scare me? You sound like my mother. We've known each other for a long time. I don't believe in magic, a lot of superstitious hocus pocus.
Everyone's been telling him that the Ark is
It's a transmitter. It's a radio for speaking to God.
a sort of magical, mystical thing that he does not believe in.
I'm going after a find of incredible historical significance. You're talking about the boogeyman.
But then, as the film progresses, he's going to be challenged with believing in something outside of himself. And I'm not talking necessarily about, the power of God, the superstitious hocus pocus, even though he gets plenty of signs from the supernatural telling him he's messing with something he shouldn't be messing with. Every single step of the way, he's been, quote unquote, blessed with miracles, if you will. And these miracles are always his friends, his acquaintances, the people who are willing to help him. And the relationship that is going to save him the most is the one with Marion. There is a visual motif throughout the film, and it's most often connected to Marion. Eyes seeing through the dark, eyes seeing the light.
Marion's the least of your worries right now, believe me, Indy.
Which is why her survival is the greatest miracle of them all. And the time that he chooses the Ark over Marion,
I'll take you out of here now. They'll start combing the place for us.
he winds up in a pit of vipers.
You bastards! I'll get you for this!
Indiana Jones,
Sorry, have to do a part 3.
adieu.
Alright, this is part 3 of Raiders of the Lost Ark and why Big Bang Theory fundamentally misunderstands what the film is about.
If he weren't in the movie, the Nazis would have still found the Ark, taken it to the island, opened it up, and all died.
This is absolutely wrong. Why?
They're digging in the wrong place.
Not to mention that the Nazis were actually going to take it directly to Germany. And Belloc already wanted to open it.
All in good time. When I'm finished with it.
However, after Indiana Jones intervened so many times,
You're gonna give mercenaries a bad name.
he knew that he absolutely had to do this.
Would you be more comfortable opening the Ark in Berlin for your Führer?
I know what you're thinking. Why not just let the Ark go all the way to Germany, let them open it there, and then everyone dies? The problem is, nobody knew what was going to happen once they opened the Ark. Indy didn't know.
Power of God or something.
No one knows its secrets.
If it is their Atanis, then it is something that man was not meant to disturb.
The city of Tanis was consumed by the desert in a sandstorm which lasted a whole year, wiped clean by the wrath of God.
By the end of the movie, he's chosen Marion over the Ark.
It depends on how reasonable we're all willing to be. All I want is the girl.
However, Indy does have a moment of weakness.
You want to say it open as well as I.
He's again trapped with Marion in a pit of vipers. But now he understands. He understands that he needs to believe. That's why he tells Marion,
Don't look at it. Shut your eyes, Marion. Don't look at it no matter what happens.
what happens at the end is not because of a lack of action on part of the protagonist. It's because he learns to believe that the Ark is going to be his end. He understands that there's hubris in wanting to talk to God. It's about a man learning to recognize faith and belief in something that isn't just an object that belongs in a museum.
Bureaucratic
What'd they
fools.
say?
You don't know what they've got there.
Well, I know what I've got here.
To misunderstand this as a plot hole is to misunderstand what Indiana Jones goes through, and to misunderstand what the actual story of Raiders of the Lost Ark is. It is not a movie about Indiana Jones trying to end the bad guys. Now, the movie isn't perfect. Of course it isn't. I don't believe that any movie is perfect. And that's my favorite movie of all time. This is part 4 of Raiders of the Lost Ark. So my previous videos got a lot of views, a lot of comments, a lot of questions. I was honestly very pleasantly surprised. I figured I would try to answer some of those questions.
Trust me.
If you recall, the US government was tracking German conversation, and they heard the name Abner Ravenwood.
You studied under Professor Ravenwood.
Indy knows that Abner understands a lot about the Ark, so he travels to where Marion is because he believes that Marion can lead him to Abner.
Abner's dead.
Marion has the medallion, and that's how Indy gets a hold of it. The Germans followed Indy to Marion. They didn't know where she was. Without Indy, they don't find the medallion. Possibly, but that's not the plot of the movie. You can't say that Indy not participating in finding the Ark is a plot hole, because that's a different plot entirely. We don't know if anyone would have found the Ark to begin with. 2. Indy found the Ark, and he brought it back to the US. And the reason why it was put in the warehouse was because Indy told the US government,
The Ark is a source of unspeakable power, and it has to be researched.
Is it ironic? Sure. But that doesn't mean that Indy failed. His objective was to retrieve the Ark, and he did. Movies are not about things. They're not about objects. They're about character. In this case, pragmatic, independent, fearless Indy has to learn to believe. The way that he's set up in the wonderful opening sequence is always as an independent. Notice how I never shot independent Indiana Jones is always by himself, whereas the other two characters are always standing together because they're afraid. In the previous videos, I talked about how there was this visual motif of eyes seeing the light through the dark. Well, what is faith but seeing with your eyes closed, seeing the light through the dark? That's why at the end, when Indy tells Mary to close her eyes, that's what they're doing. They're seeing through the dark. Again, remember, all of this transformation that happens in Indy is because of Marion. 2 things to keep in mind. At the beginning of the film, Indy lost the idol Belloc, just like he had lost Marion years ago. In his quest to find the Ark to make up for that mistake, he finds Marion. Characters want things, and they need things. Indy wanted to retrieve the Ark, but what he needed was Marion. Going back to what I said about when Indy chose the Ark over Marion, they wound up in a pit of vipers. They almost died, literally in the darkness. At the end, when he chooses Marion over the Ark, and they wind up in another pit of vipers, they survive because they see the light. Again, this is about Indy connecting with Marion, connecting with someone outside of himself. That's why at the end, Marion says,
Well, I know what I've got here.
that's not a plot hole in Raiders of the Lost Ark. That's at most an issue with characterization in Temple of Doom. I can't talk too much about this character inconsistency because this video isn't about Temple of Doom. You can disagree if you want, but I would hope that at least this opens a conversation to this surface misunderstanding of what a plot hole is and what it is not.